The New York Jets hosted their annual green and white scrimmage yesterday. Today is an off day for the New York Jets. Preseason is approaching as the New York Jets will take on the Washington Commanders next Saturday. My guest to talk all things New York Jets is Antoine Staley of the New York Daily News. Let's roll.
Jets, Jets, let's go.
Jets wide receiver Wesley Walker. Wesley, how you doing today? ESPN writer Mr. Rich Cimini, Jets reporter for The Athletic, Mr. Zach Rosenblatt, Hall of Famer and Jets legend Mr. Marty Lyons.
Your host, Connor Law.
Welcome in, everyone. We are here. It is a Sunday afternoon edition of NY Flight Jets Talk. The New York Jets hosted their annual green and white scrimmage yesterday. Instead of it taking place at MetLife Stadium, though, it took place at their practice facility in Florham Park. But my guest to talk all things New York Jets is Mr. Antoine Staley of the New York Daily News. Antoine, how you doing?
I'm all right. How you doing?
Really well. Really appreciate you stopping by on this New York Jets off day, but you ready to get right into it?
Yes.
All right, so I've started this topic, every single show really since training camp has started. Haason Reddick, he's still not at camp. This holdout is getting a little pricey for Reddick. I think they do work something out where he does play for the Jets in 2024. But is there a scenario you think he reports to camp and then a player like him who wouldn't normally play in preseason plays in preseason for the Jets because, okay, he missed all of OTAs and minicamp and training camp? Could you see that happening?
I doubt it because they have to have some kind of ramp up period for him. So, I mean, he hasn't. I mean, he really hasn't been in the facility at all. Players don't really know him there, so it's going to take some time for him to just got to get acclimated to everything. So, I think at this point, considering where we are, is August 4th, and again, like he missed like basically the first 2 weeks. Yeah, I really don't see that probably happening by any scenario, but you never know. But I highly doubt it at this point. But then again, that would also depend on him. He would probably literally have to show up like right now to training camp, and I don't think that's going to happen either.
Yeah. Yeah, so completely agree. I mean, it's getting out of hand. I mean, it just goes to show how much he really wants this new contract. 'Cause, I mean, this is, obviously he's an NFL player. The money he's made throughout his career is, he deserves more. He's been underpaid these past 2 seasons, but he still made a ton of money throughout his NFL career. I mean, this guy's spending, it's getting up to almost around $1 million right now. The amount of money that he's, just paying every single day to hold out for this new contract. But staying on the defensive side of the ball, there's some undrafted free agents on that side, whether it's Eric Watts, Leonard Taylor, or Braden McGregor. McGregor and Watts are two that have really stood out throughout camp. Taylor, I thought, okay, when we first signed this guy, there was potential of him being, a third-round pick in the draft. He ends up going undrafted. The New York Jets pick him up. He's been pretty invisible throughout training camp from what I've seen on Twitter. It might be a little different for you given that you're in the building every single day. He's been invisible for me throughout training camp. But then you have guys like McGregor and Watts specifically, who's been collecting sacks, has been stopping the run in a very successful manner. Out of those three guys, who do you see? Do you see any of them making the 53? If so, who are they?
I mean, I think it's going to depend on just preseason. I mean, that's what you're going to use the preseason games for, simply because I don't imagine a lot of veterans are going to play either way. So now you're looking for. I don't think there's a lot of roster spots available for the Jets simply because like they're a veteran group, but the ones that I definitely think they'll be in the mix for. And it's just going to determine how they play in those three games. If they play, really well, there's a chance and they could maybe, make the roster. And also could depend on the Reddit situation too, I imagine too as well. But if they don't, then they could be practice squad guys. They could be guys that just flat out let go. But I think the three preseason games, especially the joint practices coming up with Washington starting on Thursday, is going to determine a lot.
Yeah, you speak of, every single roster spot being valuable. That's something to watch, I think, specifically in the wide receiver room, because you have so many players competing there that are, kind of on that fringe. Irv Charles, I think, has a solid chance just given, what he showed last year, his special teams ability, especially with Hardy gone. I think he has a real chance to take over as that special teams ace. And then you have guys like Malik Taylor, who's played really well every opportunity that has come his way. You have guys like Tyler Harrell, Carroll, who I don't think has a super high chance of making the roster, but what he has shown, he's been returning kicks throughout camp. Could you see, personally, I think there's a chance they do it, and I'm actually a fan of the Jets doing this. They did it to start last year. You see them carrying 7 wide receivers. I personally think, I don't know if the Jets would do it. They did it to start last year, though, and then you have those two guys like Irv Charles and Malik Taylor, who it's like I kind of want to roster both, but I don't really know if you can.
I think Charles, just because of what he brings special teams wise. As far as
Yeah.
Taylor, I don't think so. But just because I think they're kind of already set. You got Garrett, you got Mike Williams who's going to make the roster. Lazard, obviously you took Corley, and then you got the young guys and Xavier Gibson and Jason Brownlee. So that sits right there. And then if you keep Charles as a special teams guy, that's 7. So yeah, that's it. So I don't really see, unless something drastically happens in the preseason, I really don't think Malik Taylor is going to make the main roster. He could be a practice squad guy that could eventually can come up should injuries come about. But yeah, I definitely think 6 is probably about 6 or 7, depending on how you view Earl Charles. It's probably going to be about where they have as far as wide receivers.
Now, Antoine, someone you did not mention there who was on the Jets 53-man roster last year was Jason Brownlee. And he hasn't really, I thought he had a very uneventful rookie season, to say the very least, in my opinion. He hasn't really stood out of the rest of the pack there in terms of, making special plays like we've seen guys like Malik Taylor do. Do you think he's a guy we could, we stash on the practice squad and Jets are kind of like, all right, I don't think anyone is really going to pick Brownlee up. If we want to elevate him, we could elevate him, but we think he's fine there.
No, I did mention Brownlee when I mentioned Xavier Gibson. So yeah,
Oh,
I think he is going to make the roster. I think he's starting to come on a little bit strong as of late the last few days there. I think he has a lot to offer there. The coaching staff really seems to really like him too as well. So I think he does make the 53-man roster again, unless something crazy were to happen or he doesn't play well do those 3 preseason games. Yeah, I think he'll make the roster.
okay. Yeah, I don't know what was. I think you might have cut out there for a second for me for some reason. I don't know. I don't know why I missed that. But staying with the offense, the blockers, Joe Tippmann, erratic snaps out of the shotgun. Have you heard any talks of, possibly bringing McGovern back at a reduced price? He's been on the market for a while. He's a cheaper option for the Jets. He has experience. Maybe they put him at center, move Tittman out to his original position at guard. Could you see that happening? What are you hearing in regards to that?
Well, nothing. Well, first of all, I think they're set at guard now. They have John Simpson. The
Yeah.
AVT is right there, so that's not really an option there. And I think the other thing that we don't necessarily know is how healthy is Connor McGovern. If you remember correctly,
Mhm.
he ended up having a season-ended injury last year and has not been signed by anybody. So we don't necessarily know if he's 100% healthy or not. Maybe he is, and that's something that possibly may do as far as depth purposes there. I always thought they could potentially circle back there. But they feel like Tippmann is going to be the center of the future. So they feel like he's just going to have to work through it there, and hopefully it gets better in time. But they really still like him as a player moving forward. He just has to do a better job as trying to get these snaps down in the shotgun formation. But yeah, I don't think that's necessarily going to be a starting option. I could definitely see possibly bringing McGovern in, for depth purposes. Should he's healthy, if he's healthy or not.
Yeah, absolutely. With the offense, Tariq Cohen just literally just out of nowhere retired, and he spoke to the media actually the day before, 2 days before he announced his retirement. He really spoke on his getting fat, what he said, his comeback journey to the NFL, and how great it feels to be back at training camp on a kind of try it. Like he was where he was during training camp. I thought there was a very good chance that he was going to make the roster to be a special teams guy, and his title would be RB4, but we wouldn't really see him on the offense. You look now, and I think they only carry 3 running backs in 2024 just because, like, Xavier Valade and Izzy haven't really shown much throughout camp. Do you think Izzy makes the roster or he is signed to the Jets practice squad?
I think it's too early to tell. It's going to be one of those things that's also going to come down to the preseason too, as well, just how he plays there. But Cohen retiring, I definitely think is the biggest beneficiary in regards to that. Because I think without Cohen was still on the roster, I would think I don't think he had much of a chance to make the roster simply because just it was just stacked to begin with. But now, I think it's a possibility if they still could only keep 3 running backs. They could also after final cuts, they could sign somebody else too if they want to keep a fourth wide receiver on the roster too as well. But
Mm.
easy, yeah. I mean, he really hasn't shown a whole lot throughout the course of camp, but I think these preseason games are definitely going to be vital to him making the roster spot or not.
Now, Nick Bawden, the Jets, cut ties with Nick Bawden, releasing him. I wouldn't really call it, the end of a road with the Jets and Nick Bawden. It might be a little concerning that the for Bawden that the Jets haven't brought him back yet. But the Jets did a similar thing with Bawden, where they quote released him back in 23 to sign Aaron Rodgers to the 53-man roster. Then they brought Bawden back on a practice squad deal. The Jets signed Anthony Firkser, tight end. He spent time with the Titans, most notably, and he hasn't played a ton of snaps at fullback. Do you think that's the end of the end of the journey for Bawden? Do you see any world where he's back with the Jets?
Probably not, because like right now there's 90-man roster. So I mean, it's not like they had to do anything as far as cutting them right now. I think that's a different situation where you're talking about bringing Aaron Rodgers back into the situation, especially considering they had to activate him and put him on the roster, or else like he wouldn't have been
Mhm.
able to practice with the team. And I think they wanted him to practice with the team, so that's kind of why they did a little bit of roster manipulation there. This is just simply because I guess they wanted to bring in somebody different and just kind of see what they were going to do. I don't know how much they're going to have use of a fullback this year, so that might have been played a big role in them releasing Bowden to begin with. So could they bring him back? Yes, certainly, because he knows the offense and knows the system and Aaron and everything like that. But I wouldn't necessarily count on it, but you never know.
Yeah, and now the green and white scrimmage, like I said, Jets hosted their annual green and white scrimmage yesterday. That was kind of probably the most game-like practice the Jets have seen so far throughout training camp. Who's a player who really stuck out to you during that practice slash mock game type environment?
Well, I mean, if you look at I don't know if it was necessarily one player that kind of stuck out. I think it was some good. Obviously, Aaron. I thought Aaron played solid. They didn't score a touchdown, but I thought he did a good job just moving the ball down the field there. Tough Garrett did a good job too as well. I mean, I think he's starting to show he's a little bit faster than what he has been there. I think the biggest problem with them is just the miscues. You talk about Joe Tipman and him snapping the ball over Aaron Rodgers' head on Saturday, and it's been a consistently problem throughout the course of training camp there. And then Isaiah Davis, so he's had a really good camp, but ended up having a fumble too,
Fumble.
which also set the
Yeah.
offense back too as well. I think Braylon Allen has performed really well. I think he's been solid. If you talk about one particular player too, Tyler Conklin is another player that's continued to stay out there as well. I think they talked about the self-inflicted wounds. Like that's been a constant theme around the Jets the last few years, and we kind of saw that on Saturday. Just kind of continue to rear its ugly head there. That's something they have to get under control too, especially considering I imagine come the season when the season starts, there's still going to be an offense that's still trying to learn itself too. You have to remember Aaron really hadn't played since 2022, so it's going to take some time for him to get reacclimated with the team and everything like that too, and get used to playing once again.
Smash that like button. Everyone, make sure you're subscribed. I'm your host, Connor Long, alongside Antoine Staley of the New York Daily News. And you mentioned there Tyler Conklin and the New York Jets tight end room. We spoke about Ferkser earlier on, and then you obviously have Kuntz and Yaboa who are really fighting for the tight end 3 job. I know, like you've mentioned, a lot of these positional battles. Uh, you really see who's going to win it and lose it during preseason. But going into preseason, I'd say Ferkser's probably out of the picture in my opinion. Who do you think has an edge right now going into preseason, Kuntz or Yaboa?
I would definitely say Ebola. I think they really like him. He has
Mhm.
special teams value too as well. So yeah, I think as of right now, I would definitely say he has the edge moving into the preseason there. And I would be surprised if he didn't make the roster at this point, because I definitely think the Jets organization has really liked him. He's been used in certain packages there.
Antoine, you cut out for me. I don't know Is it my end?
Okay, there you go. There you go. There you go. Yeah, I don't know what was going on
Okay.
there, but
Yeah.
what I was saying is, Ubo, yeah, Ubo. I definitely think Ubo has put a better chance to making the roster. Just kind of the way the organization views him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree with blocking and everything. The thing that I find interesting about Kuntz is his combination of his size and athleticism. 6'8" is a big frame for a tight end. So, like I said, I think he's a developmental project who the Jets keep on the practice squad, and maybe an injury or two happens, and Kuntz gets opportunities with the Jets on the 53-man roster. But speaking of preseason battles being won and lost, in preseason it had just been announced by Commanders coach Dan Quinn that number 2 overall pick Jaden Daniels will be taking snaps under center to start the game, first preseason game with the Jets. What are your thoughts on that? And do you think the Jets approach that game any differently now?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think they're just going to go out there and just. I think preseason you just kind of focus on yourself and then just kind of trying to get better that way to see what you have depth wise. So I don't think it's necessarily going to be a big deal for them. I think they kind of figured that was probably going to happen just simply because a younger guy there. They want to get some reps there. So I'm not terribly surprised that he's starting that game too, especially against the Jets, just because they want to see what he has to offer and also see like can he be a potential starter on week one? So yeah, I definitely thought it was probably the right move and an expected move from the Commanders.
And now, what do you think that Jets quarterback rotation looks like in preseason? Obviously, you see Tyrod Taylor right now is the currently quarterback 2 on the Jets depth chart. Do you think we see him a lot during preseason, or is it more focused on that Peasley, Steven Martinez type? Those two really taking over during the
I,
preseason with
I
Travis
think
Etienne.
I think the game, certain games it might matter. I think the first preseason game you might see him a little bit less than the other. You might see him for a quarter and a half, and then you just put the other guys in there, Peasley, Martinez. But I think maybe the Carolina game and the Giants game. I think the Giants game specifically, you'll probably see him in there a little bit more. But yeah, first preseason game, I don't imagine he'll be in there a whole lot. Like I say, maybe a quarter, I could see that, and then they just get the other guys in there and just get some experience.
Yeah, Antoine, I know we touched on Tarek Cohen earlier in the show, but the great Gator McCluskey, who made me my intro video and the background, wanted to know, with Cohen retiring, do you see the Jets in the hunt for another back that gets cut? What's an RB out there that you could see the Jets bringing in for depth?
I mean, I think they're totally fine right now. I don't know if they necessarily need to bring in another running back there. I mean, they brought in some guys there that they're going to look at as far as special teams and things of that nature. But I don't know if I think with Allen and Davis, and then if you keep Izzy, if you don't keep Izzy, at least he does. If you do keep him, he has special teams value too as well. So if you want to roll with that, then you can. But I think they're fine at the running back position. To be honest with you, I think they took a flyer on Cohen just because I mean he's had experience, really good experience with the return game too as well, and especially with the new return kickoff return. I mean it's going to be vital. You have somebody that can bring it to the house and make things happen for you in that manner. But they also have Xavier Gibson too, who they can use back there. We also seen what he can do throughout the course of last year, when obviously the Buffalo game is the one everybody talks about, where he had the walk off punt return touchdown. So I think they're fine. I think they're fine where they are at the running back position.
Yeah, now I completely agree. I don't think the Jets are going to carry 4 running backs, but a little scenario here that I wanted to pick your brain on. Let's say, Robert Sala, Joe Douglas company, they're like, okay, we want to carry 4 running backs on the 53-man roster going into 2024. I think there's a case to be made that Xavier Valade has made more noise throughout training camp than Izzy Abanikanda. You're picking between those two for RB4. They got to get, promoted to the Jets 53-man roster. Who are you picking?
Um, I probably I probably would go with Izzy slightly, although Holiday I definitely think is somebody that they really do like and they've used a little bit more throughout the course of training camp there. I think, the one thing with Izzy is the lack of pass protection. I definitely think that was something the concern that they had last year. So I definitely think I don't know if he's necessarily improved in that area. I don't know if we've seen enough to know that. That's something we have to see in the preseason, but just simply because he was a fifth round pick and still really young. He's only 21 years old. So I definitely think they possibly, if I had to pick, he'd probably be the guy.
Yeah, now moving over to the defensive side of the ball, former first round pick Will McDonald, just the Jets selecting him in general kind of raised the eyebrows of some fans there. His size concerned fans a little. 235 going into last season. He mentioned he wanted to bulk up to around 250, 255, and going into this season, that he's still around 235. Do you think, and not to mention, but he hasn't we haven't seen a ton of him throughout training camp. Do you think Jet fans should be concerned about McDonald going into year two?
I mean, I don't know about concern, but it might take him a little bit longer than I think people anticipated there. I mean, he's a bit of a project. I think coming out of Iowa State, I mean, I knew that. I think some people also knew that too as well. I mean, it's not like the Jets kind of just took him for best available player that they felt like who was on the board at the time, and uh, yeah, I don't know how much of an impact he's going to make. I mean, I've seen a lot of them throughout the course of training camp. It just had
Mhm.
he hasn't made a ton of impact plays. That could be a good thing or a bad thing. Maybe once preseason starts, then he can start to turn it on a little bit there. But yeah, I definitely think a lot of people are expecting him to have like a Jermaine Johnson type of jump. I don't know if that's realistic, just because him and Jermaine are two different players. But hopefully, if you're the Jets, that he can just make some type of impact there. Maybe get 4 or 5 sacks too, because you don't necessarily know. Assuming that you get Reddit back, you don't know where he's going to be at least early on in the season. So you're going to need people like Will McDonald and Jermaine Johnson and some other people to pick up some slack too, because you have to imagine that whenever Reddick does come in, it's going to be a little bit of a acclimation period for him. So you're going to need all hands on deck, and like they're missing 20 sacks from last year, and then that's a big deal. So they definitely need they can't just rely on Reddick to replace that production. It's going to have to be a collective effort.
Absolutely, Antoine. I really appreciate you joining me. One more question before we let you go. This is a question I started about 2 or 3 interviews ago with Jeremy Fowler of ESPN. I asked this question to every guest, and you, since this is your first time coming on since I started the question, I want to pose the question to you, non-football related, for dinner guests, anyone in the world, dead or alive, who are you taking out to dinner?
This is hard. I mean, now you put me on the spot. I, uh, Probably Tupac, Barack
Ooh,
Obama. Um, you said four. I'm trying to think.
four, yes.
Abraham Lincoln and Martin Luther King. We'll go with that. We'll go with that.
Ooh, I like it. I like it going with the activist slash politics view, and then going with one of the greats, Tupac. But like I said, Antoine, really appreciate you joining me. Now it's time for your final thoughts.
I don't have any. People just follow me at Antoine Staley on all social media platforms. Just follow my work at New York Daily News too, as well. And I'm glad. Thanks for having me on again, Connor. I really do appreciate it.
Of course, everyone, thank you guys for watching. Make sure you smash that like button on the way out. And as always, JTS, Jets, Jets, Jets.